Hello, hello, hello. Blah. I can't talk today. Welcome back to the dev thing, and it's day 11, and hold on. Gamer lighting. Anyway, that's the biggest update for now. So today is going to be pretty simple, which is great because I have to leave for work in like 20 minutes. I keep doing this to myself. When we left off last time, if you remember last time, we were going through and designing our very first level, and I was drawing it all out on paper, which I have back here in front of me. But there's a couple other little small things we need to take care of before we can move on to actually, bringing this level to life in the engine and all that kind of stuff. So let's get started. So if you'll see here, going back to our previous stuff, we're currently working on the layout and the research kind of phase. So what I want to do with these specifically, I kind of listed a couple, goals and tasks that we need to do before we can check this off fully. But drawing the basic layout we already did. We did that last time. The two big things I want to take care of today before I have to leave for work in 20 minutes. I want to figure out a better idea for the beginning puzzle, and I want to get our images and resources and like kind of reference photos and links all together, so we know what to, kind of what we're going for when we actually get to the putting the level together, textures, things like that. But the biggest thing here is going to be figuring out the puzzle in the beginning. If you remember last time, I talked about my initial idea was literally like a puzzle where you make coffee or something. However, there were a few problems with that. First of all, well, it works as like an initial puzzle to get the player kind of used to the system. However, it's not really interesting, and it doesn't say a lot about the character. The more we can make this like properly character driven and story driven in some kind of way, the better. Secondly, with how our object interaction and like puzzle interaction stuff is going to work, the process of making coffee is not going to mesh with that at all. Because if you think about making coffee, what our protagonist would have to do, what our player character would have to do is go up to like a kettle or something, grab the kettle, put water into the kettle, set the kettle on the fire, get the fire going, the kettle boils, blah, 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 take the kettle up, pour it into whatever thing we're using to make the coffee, and then brew it and all that stuff. The reason this would not work is because I am completely, at all costs, avoiding any kind of inventory system whatsoever. The only inventory I want the player to have is literally the letter they have from the deceased loved one and everything, because that'll have like a couple clues and like extra information on it. That's the only thing I want the player to have access to at all times, but otherwise, all the puzzles and everything should be out in the world that you can physically interact with. I don't want to deal with picking things up, or placing them down, or putting things in your inventory, or mixing items together in your inventory, anything like that. Not going to do it. And so for all these reasons, the making a pot of coffee just is not going to work with this at all. So we have to figure out something different to do to make a puzzle happen in the beginning. If you remember, this puzzle has to accomplish two tasks mainly. One is getting the player familiar with the object interaction system, how they're going to be manipulating objects, working with different machinery or parts, or like, different bits here and there in the environment. And two, and this is very much nice to have that I didn't think about last time, but now I am thinking about it, we want to make sure the puzzle is in some way motivated by our character or the story somehow. And obviously make it believable within this small, like, kind of cabin environment, and that's going to be the trickiest part among all of this. Because it's easy when we get to the next level in the game, where we're on, like, the road to, like, the mine and stuff. It's easy to make those puzzles work, because story-wise, there's literally a person who put puzzles there for the protagonist. But for the guy just being in his home, well, yeah, we get an interesting conundrum here. So going to this view over here, I can, desktop cam, there it is. Whoop, whoa. When you are at your home, things are not really a puzzle for you. If that makes sense. Well, obviously, okay, hopefully that should make sense. Hopefully you're not going through some crazy shenanigans trying to get like a pot of coffee going while you're at home, and you don't have to solve any logic puzzles in order to make that happen, unless you have ADHD and your puzzle involves trying to find a way to piece your schedule together to get anything done at all. Maybe. But it's getting a puzzle like within this space that is at least somewhat believable. Let's think this through. So if we go back to this thing that I wrote earlier, getting the main beats and everything of the first level, the main character's home, let's go through the takeaways that we need to happen in order for this level to work. And we might be able to hopefully work through a puzzle that makes some kind of sense. Let's figure out which of these story takeaways we can involve in some kind of logic puzzle of some kind at the start of the game. The game setting is going to be pretty apparent from the offset. We're going to be starting looking at a newspaper detailing like this whole like Ludlow Massacre stuff, and then once we put the newspaper down and we're seeing like the cabin we're in, the setting's not going to be that much of a mystery. That's meant to be very obvious and apparent from the get-go. That's not something we should really make a puzzle out of. The player character's relation to the events. Wife and brother killed at Ludlow. This one is relating to past events. This is kind of like exposition stuff we need to get the player up to speed with. And not in a sense that like we're exploring like a trait of the character per se, but this is very much like backstory, lore, history, things like that. It doesn't seem like the greatest candidate for making a puzzle out of. I mean, we can keep our minds open, but I'm not sure, right this moment, I'm not sure what exactly we can do with this. Player character cannot recall / picture things, including faces. Now, this one is a proper, like, I'm trying to think of, when we're thinking of ways we can include some traits or something going on with the player character themselves, and we're trying to include like those traits in, or like deliver those kind of traits like into a puzzle of some kind or something, some activity. Not, it doesn't have to be like some hardcore logic puzzle, just like some activity for the player to participate in to learn something. Number 3 right here might be helpful. I think we can put a pin in number 3. I don't know what we would do with it, but it is something that's not like lore specific. Let's keep going on the list. Number 4, player character is in bad state emotionally, financially, professionally. Life is not going well, and he is struggling to move on. And then 5, a letter arrives that pushes their story forward. 5 is going to be very apparent when we get to the door, and there's a letter under the door. So I feel like what we have to work with here, as far as like character-driven things to communicate to the player better via puzzle, is like 3 and 4. Because they're not lore specific, they're very much like just baked in traits of the character. We're not trying to do something like kind of puzzle that like shows you from the character's literal like perspective or point of view these things going on or how they're struggling with these things. We need these kinds of things to show up in the environment in some way that we have to fix or overcome in order to basically complete the level and move on. And then mechanic takeaways, basic movement controls, object interaction. This is already stuff we're going to be working with. Okay, so keeping these 2 things in mind, let's see what we can do with this. So when I'm thinking of someone who's going through like a lot of like emotional, financial stress after like a really big event happened in their life, let's think about like kind of like what things would that person be doing? Like what would be happening to that kind of person, right? So let's go, I'm actually going to split this screen. Puzzle ideas. Or literally just make like bullet points. Oh, I'm realizing I'm almost cutting this off a little bit. Wah! Okay. Now it's on this side. So when we're talking about a character who's going through a very tough period, emotionally, professionally, just like they've been through a traumatic event, some stuff is going on, what are things we can work with? Let's say maybe the character is drinking, in which case like things might be messy. Oh, would be messy. Sorry. things would be messy. Living space wreck. Having to clear something from the door? I don't know. Like if someone's like, we're very much in brainstorming at the moment. Someone's experiencing like this kind of emotional struggle. Maybe he's using alcohol in some way to cope with it. I feel like we can do better. I'm not sure about that. Maybe this incident, because the whole Ludlow massacre stemmed from basically union breakers and like forming a militia to literally just shoot at and just like ruin this whole like little town and everything. And this event takes away like the closest people to him. It could be he has like maybe severe trust issues. Not sever trust issues. I cannot type at all today. And what would severe trust issues give us? It'd be maybe multiple locks on the door. If our character has like severe trust issues, I mean, there's like a lot of locks on the door. He's like very wary of like intruders or people out to get him. He's kind of in a state where, you know, like the very home he was living in, even like his closest people to him, he couldn't keep them safe, and perhaps he's like struggling in a way to, who can I trust? How can I keep myself safe? Something like that. And if there's multiple locks on the door, what would even those like all those locks and stuff look like? How would that contribute to things? Because we can't really have keys because keys require an inventory, which we're not going to have. So how would this show up? Maybe this extends further to hiding certain precious belongings of some kind. Maybe has a cellar of some kind. Maybe he has a cellar of some kind where he keeps things hidden, keeps things locked away in some kind of special way, and for whatever reason we need to get into that cellar. Because I could think of like, if we have a cellar, for example, I could think of like a numeric lock being on like the cellar door with clues to the combination scattered around the. This might be it. Okay. Strange way of getting in the cellar. Maybe there's a numeric lock on the cellar door, or maybe like numeric or symbol lock of some kind. Clues to combination scattered around the home. And maybe there's like outlines of, you know, sketches of certain furniture or objects next to the lock. Okay, yeah. So like, I'm imagining we have like a big old cellar door that you have to like, you know, a trap door kind of thing that you pull up, and on this trap door is like a big bolted lock with like a combination of some kind, and scratched into the wood of the cellar door are like objects like a chest or a bookcase or an easel or like things like that, little objects that you know, in a certain order. And then when you look around the little home and everything, and you go and find those individual objects, if you look very closely at those objects, you'll find somewhere on them a little number or a little symbol that has, you know, that like basically spells out the whole combination for the lock. Because maybe our guy's a bit forgetful sometimes. Maybe he's in a bit of a drunken stupor from the night before, and he needs to get into the cellar for whatever reason, and you know, he's not remembering the code off the top of his head, and he needs to go around and find these objects to put the combination together. I think this is something to work with, but and like the nice thing about like this the combination and everything and having to, you know, the objects written out is you're gonna have to, it forces the player to physically walk around the whole living space and like the home and look at like a lot of particular things to start to find the, you know, bits of the combination. And while they're doing that, they're also getting fed a bunch of story related things. Like if you have to look at the easel and you see all those pictures and all this kind of stuff, it kind of forces you to further take in all the details for players that like might kind of glance at stuff and move on. They might not get the full, because like this aphantasia thing over here is going to be very important to our character's arc, like story arc through the game. And so making sure people pick up on this fact in particular, as well as like being in a bad state emotionally, all that kind of stuff, making sure they players are able to pick up on these things that we cannot explain in like lore stuff is going to be very important for the story to thematically make sense. So if we have some kind of puzzle that forces the player to look at everything in the apartment to check where a combination might be, they also get a bunch of like story stuff and random things, and see a bunch of things about the character while they're looking for this stuff. So I think this is good. This then begs the question of, I'm thinking about like what would be in the cellar, but maybe we need to back up a little bit, because maybe this is... Because it could just be a lock that's bolted onto the front door that keeps it very locked. But then again, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for it to be locked from the inside, unless there's some kind of like repeat of the code on the other side of the door. I don't know. Because obviously, like introducing the cellar door, things like that, introduces some story stuff we would have to work out. Because first of all, first being... why are we going into the cellar? What is in the cellar that we really need? Why is it locked away? And it just spurs a lot more questions that we would need to answer for it to make sense. What would he be keeping in the cellar? If anything, maybe we don't even go with the cellar. My initial thought is like a gun, but if he's truly like distrusting and very like wary of other people, why would he keep the gun in the cellar? I feel like he would keep the gun like on hand, ready to go by the door in case the wrong person comes knocking. Stuff about like the Ludlow Massacre, like the Union, but I mean, what things could he possibly have that would be important to other people that he would feel the need to hide? Because I don't want to get into him being like a very like major figurehead as part of like a union or anything like that, or on either side, because that starts introducing more lore and explanations and things like that we would need to sort out, and it starts making the story a little too complicated for what we're trying to do here. But this is what I'm like. This is like the important work of trying to, especially when you're making a very like story based kind of puzzle game, especially that we're going to be getting into with like the next game, like the bigger game after this, where the stories I want to make sure all the puzzles make sense in the world that they're in, and with the story I want to use the puzzles to deliver on that story in some kind of way. And so things need to at least nominally in some kind of way make sense for why they exist. This one I'm not going to get super too in the weeds, making sure all my I's are dotted and T's crossed and things like that, because I feel like that would bog the development down way too much. But it is still quite difficult. All right, let's think about this. What's in the cellar? Information regarding Union stuff? Who knows? Maybe the player character had a role to play in the massacre in some kind of way. Of course, then we'd have to, if he's going into the cellar, what's he going down there for? Because we could move around, because how this section kind of works out is that we end on the letter arriving under the door. So what's he trying to get out of the cellar before then? What is he trying to get out of the cellar before then? If anything, it could be we just have this puzzle relating to like literally the front door of the house instead of like a cellar door, because like the cellar door introduces a lot of story complication that I'm not sure we want to deal with. Maybe the front door is locked down tight. This one's hard. This one's so difficult. I have 5 minutes left. What if it's a safe that we're trying to get into? What if it's a safe with a combo lock that we're trying to get into, not an entire cellar? I mean, I suppose it would serve the same purpose as a cellar, but I do like the idea of like a cellar being like hidden underneath a rug. They have to like pull out of the way. Perhaps a hidden compartment somewhere with like a, they open up. And what's in this compartment? I'm almost thinking like, okay, what if the, okay, what if there's some kind of, I always keep doing that, I swear to God, code cipher used for union communications. Wait a second. Okay, what if we forget, hold on. All right, I have an idea. This is gonna be a crazy idea. What if, story-wise, what if our player character, okay, I think, hold on. Okay, I think I figured this out, maybe. What if our player character had already received the letter? What if our player character had already received a letter from the wife/brother, but it was, and you could tell it was them because of the signature and everything. However, the entire letter is just a jumble of nonsense and random characters and stuff, and it cannot be made sense of. And then suddenly one day, the thing that slipped under the door is a cipher of some kind. Okay, maybe he gets the cipher for the letter. Yeah, maybe we have this all the other way around, where he has this letter from the beginning, but it's all gibberish written in like a cipher of some kind. And the key to the cipher is slipped under the door. Oh man, okay, this suddenly works story-wise. Because what if the level doesn't end with... What if the level doesn't end with the thing being slipped under the door? It starts, like you're reading the paper, and as soon as you set it down, and suddenly there's a big knock at the door. Player character like puts the paper down, gets something up from the desk. We have the same view and all that kind of stuff that we detailed earlier. Walk around, go to the front door, see something is slid underneath it, and when we look through the door, absolutely no one is there. And it has something about, oh man, this is gonna be like a whole thing, but I think this works a lot better, is more interesting. But then, okay, maybe I'm also thinking maybe we're going a little too far and we're getting out of our depth, and this doesn't relate to the character enough. Oh man, I feel like my meds are wearing off. I'm unable to like take care of this right now. I'm gonna have to come back to this. I'm gonna come back to this. There will be a cut here, and it'll be later in future me, so do that. Hello, we are back, and it might be a couple days later, but I'm back. We're gonna finish this up real fast. Okay, so having been thinking about this this particular puzzle thing for a couple days now, and also talking with a few friends of mine last night. You know who you are. Thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate the input. I think I just need to think about it and say it out loud a few times. I believe what I have going over here, what we were working on, I think this is on the right track. So in terms of specifically what we are trying to keep hidden, I think it makes most sense to have, like, if our protagonist here was part of the Union, especially how this is going to link into the next game with this kind of alternate history thing with a lot of like conspiracy going on. The Union's trying to be very close knit, especially these unions in Colorado being very. There's going to be some wacky stuff going on there in the next game. While this did not necessarily happen in real life, I think it does make sense for this particular alternate history setting to have a more organized, more kind of stealthy Union a little bit, which means it would make sense if they're trying to secretly send messages back and forth to one another, that they would have some kind of cipher or code cipher to encode said messages to make sure only the people that need to be reading them are reading them. Furthermore, it seems like a decent justification that our protagonist here would be keeping that code cipher that he has safe and secret, especially if he's being very paranoid after all the events. Like, he doesn't know if anyone's after him. He doesn't know if he's being hunted down for being part of this Union. In reality, he probably wouldn't be. He's like kind of a small, very small little piece that was in a much larger machine. I think the company people probably took care of the people they wanted to take care of. That being said, being in his position, I would understand being paranoid and wanting to keep that union stuff kind of locked away, just in case, because he feels like he might need it in the future potentially, but also doesn't want it to be found. And as such, if we're going along the lines of keeping things more hidden, especially this kind of stuff from his past, I don't believe keeping it in a safe would be best. Keeping it in a locked cellar under the floorboards, under a rug, would be the best course of action, because you can have it under the rug and can be a bit stealthy. If the wrong people came in and spotted the safe and wanted to like crack it, they could. However, it is easier to cover up and keep a kind of like little small cellar concealed in your house, in your home. So to summarize, I believe this is the kind of sequence of things that I'm going to be going for this puzzle. Cabin puzzle, we have a cellar door or cellar trap door hidden underneath a rug. So yeah, there's a sturdy lock on the trapdoor. Next to the lock, scratch in the wood, symbols of 4 items. It could be furniture, knickknacks, anything like that can be found in the cabin. And when you find these items, they have a piece of the lock code written on them. And I'm also thinking it'd be nice to have one of the pieces kind of buck this trend a little bit. I don't know if you've like seen those perspective puzzles. I think that'd be something like that might be a little forced to have like a perspective puzzle be part of the lock puzzle, but I think it'd be interesting. Oh god. Okay. What if like, okay, and this is me playing around a little bit. What if one of the items is on the desk? Yeah, so I think that'd be really cool. Okay, so yeah, one of the I'm imagining like a little item of some kind that is on like a little holder that can be rotated around, and there's a little line painted on it, and there's also a few more lines painted on a wall or a far wall. And when you rotate the item just the right way, the line on it lines up with the lines on the wall, and then you get a piece of the code for the trap door lock. I think that'd be just like a little extra thing, because I think like three things that you find pretty easily, like if you have scratched into the wood symbols of like different pieces of furniture or like items like in the home, going and looking at the right spot on those things, revealing the code would be really cool. And I think it'd be super useful to make all these things more interactive. So actually, yeah, because I'm also imagining like items, one of the items, or maybe we can keep playing with this perspective thing, because it could be very simple that you just like look at, you find the numbers or symbols or whatever that go to the code lock around the place. But I think spicing it up a little bit wherever we can is going to greatly help with this puzzle. Make it a bit more interesting. Make little mini puzzles within the puzzle is something that I think is always welcome, as long as it's not like bogging down all the progress and like really slowing down the pacing. I think having little mini puzzles for each puzzle is would be pretty cool. So I'm thinking like maybe one of the drawings on the trapdoor is of the bookcase. And when you look at the bookcase, there's nothing super apparent on it, but when you move some of the books around, maybe you find a code scratched onto the thing, or maybe similar to the little item on the desk, there's like part of a number or part of a symbol scratched into the wood of the bookcase. However, you need the right book in the right spot next to it in order to complete the symbol. That I think would be really cool. And also that gets into I think it's better to have on the code lock have it be symbols instead of numbers, because if you have like, you can identify a 4, well, depending on how it's written, but you can identify a 4 or 6 pretty easily just with like half of it or like a quarter of it. So I think leaning into little symbols being all in the combination lock would help with like, making these like perspective kind of puzzles actually be interesting, or like be actual, you have to solve the perspective puzzle in order to continue forward. And also thematically in universe, this also adds like, another little level of security to the cellar door lock and all that stuff. In case he forgets it, he understands how to put the things the right way in order to find the code, but other people would struggle with it. That being said, you as the person who is going to be inhabiting his shoes are going to struggle with it a little bit. This is one of those things where we are in our protagonist's home, so he should know how all of these things work, but you being the player don't. It makes it a little awkward. However, I think suspension of disbelief, like, just for the sake of the game, like, rule of fun, we want a little puzzle to work. And like I said, in the next game, I do want to get like super nitty gritty. Like, each puzzle has to have like a purpose in the story and for the character to be interacting with it in all forms. With this initial game, we'd have a little fun with it. We don't have to be so nitpicky on every little thing. So the fact that he needs to go around and find little pieces of his code lock again, I'm not going to worry about it too much. But moving right along, we have to get to the reason there is a code lock inside the cellar, locked away. A book with a cipher key inside, given to all the previous union members. And then finally, the letter he receives from the wife brother is written in this cipher. I think if we have a combo lock with 4 inputs on it, I want to have 4 because I don't want people to like brute force it. You can very easily brute force like a symbol or 3 inputs, so I'd rather have 4 inputs. I want to have a combo lock with 4 inputs. There are going to be symbols on it. Scratched into the wood is going to be the different furniture and items within the cabin that will give you the number, or like in this case the symbol for the combo lock, and they're going to be in order. And I want to make it so essentially increasing a difficulty slightly as you go. So the first symbol you find on there, when you find that object in the cabin, you look at it and you just see like written right on the back of it the symbol that you need for the first input. Cool. The second one could be something that you have to like properly pick up, like go to an item and it's not apparent that it's on there, but you have to turn it around in order to find the symbol on that one. The third one can be the bookcase, where you go to the bookcase, there's nothing immediately apparent on the surface, but when you start moving the books around, part of the symbol appears. However, you need one of the books in the right spot to complete the symbol. And then finally, the fourth one will be the highest difficulty one, is going to the item on the desk with the line painted on it, and you have to piece together that this item also involves the few lines that are painted on the far wall behind it, and you have to line up the item correctly and look at it at the right way in order to get the last symbol. All of this is like teaching you to be more careful and like observant of your surroundings, but it also has like a nice little progression in terms of difficulty for each part of the code. It's a nice little slow introduction into the mechanics of literally clicking on items and then and like the object interaction system. While the onset of this puzzle isn't super elegant, like I said, this is the protagonist's home. He should already know how to do this, but we are learning how to do this, being the player. So that is like the one little spot where the puzzle, or like the purpose of the puzzle, breaks down a little bit. However, given that we're not trying to get too super in the weeds with this first game, that is something that mentally we as the player can like set aside just for the sake of having a fun puzzle, like an interesting way of interacting with the world. Also, no inventory system whatsoever needed to complete this puzzle. That's extremely important. We can, when the player acquires the cipher, we can leave it there and get on to our next story beat, where now the letter is decoded and we get the big reveal that the letter is from the wife and brother, but they've been dead for over a year, so what's going on? And this pulls us into the next section of our game, out into out onto the road. So I'm going to say we're going to go over to board view because it's more satisfying to do it here. Layout prologue, home, boom, complete, and complete. I got the layout of the puzzle and generally what the puzzle is going to look like, but I need to actually go through and physically draw, like, what are the symbols going to look like? What's the lock going to look like? First, I want to actually get into the engine, build the level first. I need to know what we're working with inside of it, and that'll help me personally with actually designing the puzzle and what it's going to look like. But like, what are the items? That'll become more clear, I think, when I start designing the, when I start like actually blocking out and creating the level. And also I need to write down all the symbols, how those symbols are going to be revealed. That's what we have to do later. But for next time, we're going to actually be going into the engine and putting this level together. And that's gonna be real hard. This kind of stuff like story, things like this is like, I won't say it's easy for me, but it's a lot easier for me in terms of just picking it up. I can draw a few things, I can talk out loud and think out loud and get all that stuff. Actually applying it and putting it into the engine is a whole other story, because that's when we start getting into a bunch of skills that I do not have. I do not have a lot of skill working in the engine. I do not have any skill with texturing or modeling or anything like that. So we have to figure that out. Oh boy, it's going to be an ordeal. That's going to do it for day 11. Like I said, next time we'll be getting into the engine proper, so that'll be exciting. And now for commentary, of which, once again, there's only one comment left, and you know who it's from! Our lovely man, Oliver Dive, 9759, who says, let's go, with a little thing. And he also says, you're making solid progress, and it's great to see the first level coming together. Since you're entering a new phase, this might be a good moment to create a logo and banner for the channel. That's my interpretation of that emoji. Anyway, it would help attract new people. That kind of support and feedback could really help you keep moving forward. So excited to see what comes next. Thank you very much, Oliver Dive. I agree. Also, I'm hearting it, and I'm liking your comment right now. You can't see it because I'm on this view. I agree that I do need a logo and a banner, and that would probably help. I've kind of been neglecting that task for a long time. Because like I said at the start, this channel is very much for, first of all, document the process, but also give me a more structured way of learning all this stuff. That being said, in terms of it being a helpful resource for other people, which I hope it is, it would be nice to, you know, get like a logo and banner and stuff for the channel and make it a little more official. I have to work on it. Maybe we could have like a little logo design contest of one person, because hardly anyone's watching. We'll see. I'll get into it more later. It's in the back of my mind. It will be happening soon-ish. Anyway, but for now, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see y'all next week, hopefully, now that my life isn't so crazy and I can put these videos out a little bit more quickly. Yep. Bye.